logic-wise, what could be wrong with the pseudocode? Not the way it's worded, but there's something really important missing from it.
An else? Nothing to break out of the loop.
Yeah, there's nothing to break out of the loop. And you're pretty close with saying an else, but we don't have an if. So there's no if to need an else. However, we need an if. There's no way to bail out of the loop. When do we want to bail out of the loop? When we read a blank line. So here, after we read the line, we need to make sure it's not blank. Also, I forgot to print the title, but we can fix that real easy with a print statement. So here, after we read the line, if it's blank, we're going to break. That'll get us out of the inner loop. Same thing here. If we try to read the title, but it's just a blank line, or we hit the end of the file, which will also return a blank line when we call read line, then we need to break out of the outer loop. So we just need to add two if statements. We're not going to really need else's on them, but let's do this. If title is equal to empty, there's no space there. Half the people in the class before y'all started putting spaces there, which made me think about doing this. I'm going to erase this, but I'm going to put it back. If the length of the title is 0, that's the same thing. I don't know which way you like doing it. I'm just going to say if title is equal to 0, meaning if it's empty. And if that's true, we need to break. Alrighty, same thing here. If we try to read a line but we get nothing, or it's a blank line, we want to break. So if the line is equal, okay, so we just added these two guys. That one, whenever you hit tab there, it kind of goofs up. That one, that one, that one. Now the pseudocode is kind of hand waving. It's saying, oh, by the way, we're going to be doing something, and it's not showing the details. One of the details we're going to have to handle before we're all done is that these are text. This is a string. But when we do math, we really want them to be integers. So we're going to have to convert those scores, integers or floats. We're going to have to convert them to numbers before we can actually calculate the average. So there's going to be an intermediate step here, which I guess we can mention just to remind ourselves by the time we get there. So let's go down here, but that's more of a technical matter, because in another language like C++, you might be able to read these in as integers or floats without having to do that conversion. But I'm going to go ahead and add it here. All right, when I said calculate average from, I guess I forgot the word scores. Calculate average from scores. I'm going to put a line above that that says convert scores to floats. Why floats? So that they could enter an 80.5 or whatever. All right, that's our pseudocode. That's really close. It doesn't tell you how to convert the scores to floats. It doesn't tell you how to split the data or get the name from the list or get the scores from the list. We'll figure that out as we go. All right, so like I said, save this data file, data.txt or whatever you want to call it, into your script directory. Same place you create your py file. If you don't put it in the same directory, it's not going to work. Now I'm just going to minimize it. And I'm going to bang that over there and actually create a Python file. And we're just going to almost do line by line conversions of these things. Some steps may take a couple lines, not just one. Sometimes what I do is I just copy the entire pseudocode and paste it into the Python code, but comment it out, and then use those as comments to guide it. Since I have them both on the same screen, I don't think I need to do that. Your name, your date, class scores, grading program. All right, input file name. Every time we have input in a pseudocode, we wind up doing at least two things, if not three. And the third thing would be converting it to a number, an integer or float. But we don't need to do that. But we at least need to print a message out. However, you can do all that in one statement if we really want. File name is equal to input, open what file. All right, we've done that. That took care of that statement. Let's come down here. File is equal to open the file name followed by quote R, meaning we're opening it for reading. We don't want to open it for writing. That would erase it, or put something at the end of it. Some other program had to have made this text file, but we're not going to worry about that. Not this class, period. This is much more like real application programming than what we've done in the past. Because what you do is you define your requirements. You discuss them with the customer, or if you're just making it up on your own, you are the customer, And you come up with a data file format that you're going to follow, or if it's not going to read data, you at least specify the requirements that it has to meet, and then you work out the logic, and then you write the program from it. Now, a lot of people do cowboy coding, which is just where they start writing a program, skipping the flowchart, skipping the pseudocode and stuff like that. And if you can get away with that, that's great. But if you work in a large company, there's probably going to be people designing the code, and they'll give you designs, and then you'll implement the code. Or you will be the person designing the code. Or you'll be the person testing the code after somebody else writes it. They get divvied down the larger the project. You can be sure that Call of Duty, has big teams of programmers, big teams of designers, big teams of people working on the graphics and the sound and the testing and stuff like that. So it gets very divvied up. So there's, cool movements, indie game programming, where one or two people are writing the entire game. I'm sure the gamers here know about that kind of stuff. Alrighty, so here we go. We're going to do while true. We're going to trust that the file got open. If it didn't, we'll fix that and see if we can figure out how to fix that. But anyways, while later, maybe. While true, we need to read the title. Title is equal to file.readLine. And I'm not going to do the business where I write the code wrong and then try to walk y'all through correcting it. That just confuses people. So I'm just going to say right off the bat that when you do read line, it includes the /n. So if you printed out the title, it would print out a blank line at the end. So we want to strip it. Stripping it means to remove the tabs and the /n's and the spaces like that from the beginning and the end of the data. So it doesn't break it if somebody accidentally comes in and puts, a space on that or, whatever. So let's do that. We're going to strip the data. Title is equal to title.strip. That removes the spaces from the beginning and the end of each line. Now we need to see if that's blank. We could either do if length of title equals 0 break, but if you promise me you're not going to put a space between the quotes, we can do that. If title is equal to quote, no space, break. That gets us out of the while. Bless you. All right, now we need our inner loop. This is a nested loop. It's a loop inside of a loop. So, while true. And you can write these kind of things without while trues, using flags or something like that. I find this the easiest to write. Not all people think it's a good way to do it. I don't even want to discuss other ways of doing it, but it involves like doing, while okay, and then setting a flag equal to false if the data is not okay, or while not done, that kind of thing. But that requires more if statements and stuff inside it. I think this is the simplest logic. Alrighty, let's read a line. Line is equal to file.readLine, and again we're going to strip it right off the bat. Line is equal to line.strip. I forgot to print the title out. So, above that while true, why don't we just print the title out? I skipped something already. I skipped reading the name of the class. Rather than account for that, I'm going to totally cheat and delete that. Go back to your data file, and if you had this thing where it said Programming 101 and a blank line, just delete those two. It wouldn't be that hard to accommodate it. Maybe we'll do that later. That's like the least important part of this. The important part is the concept of the looping and the breaking up of the data. All right, so if that line is empty, if line is equal to 2 quotes, no space, break. All right, we are here. This is the hairiest part of it. Do people say that anymore? Gnarliest? If we're doing this to this. But we can do it. But why don't we just test what we've written so far? So temporarily, we're going to put a print statement here that prints what we've read. Just see if this code is structured okay.
You didn't put anything on the first print for print title.
I haven't spotted where I had my print. Oh, right there, right there. Yeah, okay. Make sure you fix that. Above your inner while true, do print title. And now we've added print line. Now we need to close our file. So file.close, and let's print a done. Now run that. I guess I should run it too. I'm going to call this class grades. One advantage to writing a program like this is as you take more programming classes, you're going to get real tired of typing in data over and over. Enter the rainfall for 12 months. Okay, you made one mistake. Enter the rainfall for 12 months, doing that over and over. Instead, you could create a file with your rainfall, and you could read from that file. So we really ought to introduce the idea of reading from files way earlier in the curriculum than we do in a lot of classes. I think I may take that into account in future semesters. Okay, I haven't run it yet. Time to run it. Run module. Open what file? I think I called mine data.txt. Okay, it didn't crash. That's a really good sign. We're not absolutely sure it's working. We should have print, quote title equals end quote or something like that for debug purposes, but I think I'm just going to trust the force. I want to make sure. Now for the heavy lifting. We're going to have to use split. I'm going to give y'all a quickie reminder of the way split works. If you have a string that looks like this, that's not a string. My name is Fred. And then you do this. My list is equal to string.split. And I want you to break upon spaces. And then let's print that list out. Then it takes that string and it puts it into a list. Now, it didn't ignore the fact, I should remove that space there. I was kind of hoping that it would ignore the fact that there were two spaces there. But anyways, so we wound up with an empty record in our list. You see the way that works. When we read in one of these pieces of data here, it's going to be in this format. S is equal to, that's what we're going to get when we read it in. So I'm going to run it now, see what the list looks like. We want to pull the name out. What element is that in that list? We know how to get the first element out of a list. Yeah, it's index 0. So we're going to do name is equal to list 0 after we split it. And then we want the rest of this to go into a list named scores. How do you slice a list so that you get everything from that one into the end of the list? We're going to use slicing. So you're going to use, yeah, or 1 colon and then nothing after that. That'll get it to go all the way to the end. So I'm going to do that in my little demo here. List is equal to L sub, name is going to equal to L sub 0 just to get the name out. And then the scores is going to equal everything from the first element to the end of the list. So L colon with nothing else. So we're going to do that same thing over here. Let me print the name and the scores out just to make sure that works. All right, that breaks it out. Well, that didn't work. What have I done wrong? This is one list item. I have failed. When I split it, I told it to split on spaces. But what's our delimiter? It's not spaces, it's commas. So I should really split on commas. There you go. We got the name. We got the list of scores. There's only one problem left with the data. What are these? Are these strings or are they numbers? These are strings. Before we can call sum and stuff like that to get the average, those are going to have to be numbers. And there are multiple ways of doing that, some of them with very short, very terse syntax that we haven't learned about, and others with somewhat longer where we'll write a function with a for loop that turns those all into numbers. Okay, so just like we did here, let's split our data after we read it in. So above that print line, L is equal to, well, our string is not called S. Our string is called line. So line dot split with commas. We don't need to print it, so I'm going to skip that line. But I do want to get the name out. So the name is whoopsie, where'd that quote come from? The name is equal to the first element of that list. And the scores is equal to everything else. Let's change this print line statement to print the name followed by the scores just like we did here. We're getting there. We're going to have to turn those scores into floats, numbers, so that we can do math on them and then calculate the average. That last part, the average, is easy. You just take the sum of the list divided by the length of the list and you're good. I'm going to pull this over here, temporarily obscure my code just to make sure it looks good. Homework 1, Joe Bob made those grades. Jeff made that. Jill made that. Homework 2. And then on the first exam. Okay, That seems to be working. Wave your hand if you're getting typos. Don't let me get too far. Okay. Our last hurdle is that scores is a list of strings. Here's what we want to be able to do. Total is equal to the sum of the scores. The average is equal to total divided by the length of the scores. This isn't going to work. This is going to crash because you can't add up strings. So we need a line between these two statements that will convert. Yeah, unsupported operand type. All it's saying is that it doesn't know how to add a string. More than one way we could do that. One is we could write a replacement for the sum function that would accept strings. That may be easier actually than what I'm just about to do. And let's go ahead and do it. We need a function that will go through the list, turning each string into a number, and return that new list. So we're going to have to scroll up to the top. In this language, and in a lot of other languages, you need to define your functions before you call them. That's why I'm putting it up at the top. If you didn't do that on your code in your exam, no biggie, but I didn't count off. So anyways, what are we going to call this? Maybe just convert list. It needs to take a list, and it's going to return a new list. I'm going to call this slist. And the list that it's going to return is going to be called nlist for numbers, or flist for floats. Let's do flist. So whenever you're doing list processing like this, you have to first declare a empty list, and then you can start appending stuff to it. Now we need a for loop that's going to step through slist, getting each string. Somebody give me some syntax for stepping through slist with a for each style syntax.
For I in flist.
Yeah, except I'm going to make it for s in slist just because it's a string. Personal quirk. For s in slist, pardon me? Yeah. Then we need to convert that. So let's get a floating point number out of it. Or we could just convert it right there on the spot. S is equal to float s. And we want to append that to flist. Flist dot append that string. Now that it's been converted to a number, it's safe. Then we want to return that new list. We may get to this other part where we actually write that data file out. This is going more quickly than the last time. Alrighty. I need to scroll back down in order to add the code that's going to call convert list because it's not on the same page. But I don't want to do that until I'm pretty sure everybody's typed that. Anybody need extra hand typing that? Nope. Okay. We can always come back to it, or I can, copy and paste it and look at it over there. So now that we have the scores is equal to, oh gosh, I've already forgot the name of my function. What's it called? Convert underscore list. Alrighty. Convert list scores. My print statement needs a slight modification because it's not printing out the average yet. I think I hear you telling me I've made a mistake. Just a sec. Yeah. Alrighty, what'd I do wrong?
You typed out the full name.
Oh, AVG there, average there. Thanks. Thank you very much. All right. It is actually working. It's calculating the average. If the average needs to be like a percent, that would be more challenging. I'm not seeing a quick way of doing that without letting it know how much the homework is worth. I'm going to give you an idea of what that might look like. Maybe we could do this. Homework 1, each assignment is worth 20 points. Homework 2, each assignment is worth 20 points. Don't type this because I don't actually want to implement it. Test 1, each test is worth 100%. That'd be cool, but we're not going to do it. The other cool thing to do would be to somehow keep a running tally of all of Joe Bob's scores and all of Jeff's averages and all of Jill's averages, so that at the very bottom we could print all the averages. We're not ready to do that because we haven't learned what a dictionary or a mapping is. A mapping is a way that you could correspond. Anyways, we're not going to even talk about that. All right, seeing as how we have 25 minutes left, let's write a program that'll write a data.txt file. But first I better check, make sure nobody's got syntax errors. Let's do it. All right, guys, that would give us about 10 minutes to write the program that would write the data out. I'm not sure we could do it in that amount of time. So why don't we go ahead and end class here. Pardon me. That's the pseudocode over there. Right, I didn't change the pseudocode. So let's make a Dropbox for this. If you will upload the program file, the data file, and if you did the pseudocode, that'd be up.
Called grade file reader?
Right, grade file reader, that's where to put it.